Hi everyone, my name is Tajei, and today I'll be walking through how to conduct effective and productive research for debate. I think most of us know that research is an important part of becoming better at debating. It allows us to develop content knowledge for a wide range of motions, and also gives us a breadth of examples to use in specific rounds to show the judge that our points do in fact play out in the real world and aren't just hypothetical or isolated examples. So how then do we conduct effective research? One of the most important things to bear in mind is to start research with intent, such as finding answers to certain questions or filling gaps in our knowledge which you might realize you have. And most of the time, we as debaters, I think, read around in a very aimless manner, chancing upon facts here and there from a wide variety of sources. While there's nothing wrong with this, it alone doesn't ensure that you have comprehensive knowledge of any particular issue, and also leads to you being uncertain about the knowledge you do have and not entirely sure whether it's true or not. So one particularly useful way to solve this problem is to remedy knowledge gaps from previous debates. So say for instance that you were in a debate that asked about the effectiveness of protectionism, and you couldn't really think of a country where it had been implemented effectively with positive outcomes. That might then be one of the areas you would want to focus on for future research. And after that, you could learn about related fields, such as things about trade barriers, foreign exchange, and so on. The important thing here is that your research in this way is focused and deep, rather than being very surface level as it usually is for us debaters. I don't think it would be particularly useful for me to go into the specific kinds of sources that our team uses for research purposes, since so much of it is free on the internet now and you can find well-documented guides on what to read. But I would say that it's important to ensure a balance in the content you do consume, and it's hard to go wrong with that guiding principle in mind. So that covers how you would want to approach research on a very general level, in a way that's systematic and geared towards very specific questions that you might have. And on a team level, knowledge building through research is something you might want to consider discussing with your teammates. Some teams find it useful to divvy up the realm of human knowledge, or at least the parts relevant to debate, into different sections that are assigned to different team members, who therefore study that content in much greater detail. To some teams, this is very effective at ensuring a breadth of knowledge exists within the team. To other teams, however, they find that this artificial split of content doesn't ensure that each team member has the necessary knowledge to contribute well in most prep discussions, which then become monologues by the person who knows the content the best. They then find that having an overlap in content knowledge between different team members is useful in creating better quality arguments and examples. Ultimately, each team needs to decide for itself which model it prefers, but the most important thing is to have this discussion and ensure that knowledge building through research is something that your team is focusing on a team level and not just on an individual level. But in a more practical sense, what are some useful ways to reinforce the knowledge you've gained? One of the most effective ways to do this is through usage. So once you learn about an example, don't just try to remember the example, try to think of an argument or a chain of logic where that example would fit in, and how you would explain the whole thing, including the example. So in the earlier instance, you wouldn't just try and remember the example of protectionism, you would try to think about why protectionism is effective with reference to an example. This way, you form an association between the example and the topic in question, helping you remember it in the high-stress context of the 1 hour preparation time, allowing you to use it more effectively. Another useful method for building retention is to try and explain the thing you've learned to someone else, maybe a teammate or just a friend. Doing so forces you to develop the content in an understandable manner and also allows you to realize if there are any gaps in your understanding. So in the earlier instance, for example, if you try to explain the concept of protectionism and how it protects nascent industries to someone else, and then halfway through you realize that there's a gap, there's a mechanism which you don't understand, then you could go back and research more in depth into protectionism and cover that gap in knowledge. The last thing that our team does is to cross-train, where we practice our content knowledge in exercises that are about style. So in voice lessons, which are meant to help us develop speech abilities, we often deliver speeches which are about content points that we've learned about, even though that's not necessarily necessary for the purpose of voice training. It's just about ensuring that there's this constant reinforcement of the things you've learned in different aspects of your team's comprehensive training program. I hope that all of these points have been helpful in understanding how to do effective research for debates and how to remember the things that you've learned through research. We should also have another video published soon on how to use examples effectively in the context of debates, which should nicely tie into what I've talked about today in terms of synthesizing the content knowledge you have into useful and effective examples. Thank you.